For months now, authorities have been under pressure to explain the circumstances that led to an FBI agent fatally shooting a man with ties to the Boston Marathon bombing suspects. Today, the Justice Department and the state of Florida released separate reports into the shooting, both concluding the use of deadly force was justified. In a moment, we'll get reaction from the ACLU, which led the call for answers. But first, a look at what we learned today. The twin reports add extensive new detail to what law enforcement says happened inside this Orlando apartment on May 22nd. Two Massachusetts state troopers and an FBI agent arrived around 7:30 p.m. to question Ibrahim Todashev about his relationship with marathon bombing suspect Tamerlan Tsarnaev and his possible connection to a triple murder in Waltham in 2011. The officers say they watched Todashev's fights on YouTube and were concerned about his propensity for violence. Still, they say he was cooperative. After 10 p.m., the questioning turned to the triple murder. Officers say Todashev admitted involvement and waived his Miranda rights. These photos, taken by a trooper and contained in the state report, shows Todashev just before the shooting. As he wrote his alleged confession on this pad, officers say he grew agitated, then suddenly flipped the white coffee table onto the FBI agent, who suffered a large gash on his head. Todashev bolted into the kitchen and grabbed a long metal pole. With his gun drawn, the agent told Todashev to stop, but Todashev lunged at the trooper with the pole. The agent fired several rounds. Todashev fell to his knees, quickly sprang up and lunged again. The agent fired several more rounds this time, killing Todashev. The trooper says the agent's action saved me from serious physical injury or death. Exactly what Todashev wrote on the pad remains redacted. So, do these reports put the lingering questions to rest? Carol Rose is Executive Director of the ACLU of Massachusetts. Thanks for joining us, Carol. What's your reaction to these twin reports? Do they put the questions that you had to rest?
Well, I appreciate that these reports are a step in the right direction towards greater transparency, but in so many ways they raise many more questions than we even had before, specifically about why FBI protocols weren't followed and what was the role of the Massachusetts State Police, which seems to me much greater than we had realized before in this shooting death.
Today, we got a statement from an attorney representing the Todashev family. He notes that the state report does not explore or analyze the documented pattern of gross civil rights abuse, which we, the family, have documented occurring before, during, and after the interrogation of Mr. Todashev. Do you agree with that argument that there was a gross violation of civil rights?
Well, I think this report just focuses on what happened in the very few moments in the room at that moment. It doesn't purport to take into account what happened. Why weren't the protocols followed? If they thought he was so dangerous, why did they leave him alone in the room with one FBI agent? What were the Massachusetts State Troopers doing there? Why were all of the other people who were associated with Todashev in this investigation either deported from the United States or not allowed to come back in after they'd gone home to visit family? So many questions that still remain unanswered that I think that in many ways these reports, while a welcome first step, really beg the question of why the Attorney General of Massachusetts hasn't done an independent investigation and whether she's willing to do so now, given that we now realize that there were Massachusetts State Trooper in the room, two of them at least, one at the time of the shooting, and that they were apparently doing video and audio recording throughout this interrogation. Can we get copies of that? Why were they recording? The FBI doesn't normally record. And why were they sending texts saying things like, "Who's your daddy?" in the moments just before the shooting occurred?
Does it put to rest the question of the shooting itself?
In terms of the actual moment of the shooting, hard to say. But the larger questions, we had two homicides. We had a triple homicide and we had the Boston Marathon bombing. What's going on with these larger investigations? And why so much secrecy? And why did it take this long to do even this small bit of an investigation?
We learned that officers took audio and video recordings of the interview, but not the key moments of the shooting. Do you expect those to be released at some point?
I think they should be released, and along with the understanding of why was it turned off in the moments before the shooting. Normally the FBI doesn't actually videotape or audio tape interrogations. I wish they would, but they don't. In this case, it was state police that did that. So apparently they weren't operating under the authority of the FBI, but on their own or under somebody's authority, and we don't know whose. And that's one of the pending questions that I think the people of Massachusetts, and certainly the victims of both the Boston Marathon bombing and the triple homicide, their families are going to want to know some answers.
And you think Martha Coakley's office, the Attorney General's office, could answer those questions and should?
Well, I think she should at least try.
All right. Carol Rose, thanks for joining us.